In the quiet corners of old London, long before the city learned to roar with machines and crowds, there lived a woman whose story was almost lost in the smoke of forgotten chimneys. Her name is whispered only in the cracks of old brick walls, in the cobblestone streets where footsteps echo like memories, and in the soft warmth of bread rising at dawn. They called her the baker woman of old London. Not because she baked the finest bread the city had ever tasted, but because she baked hope into every loaf. When London was cold, she warmed it. When people went hungry, she fed them. And when the nights were long, foggy, and silent, she kept a single lantern burning in her bakery window, a lantern people said could guide even the most lost soul home. Some said she was just an ordinary woman. Some said she was a ghost of kindness, wrapped in flour-dusted clothes. Some believed she carried secrets, the secrets of women who lived quietly, who loved quietly, and who sacrificed quietly, yet changed the world quietly. If you walk through old streets of London today, beneath the yellow glow of lamps, you might still feel her presence. Perhaps in the smell of warm bread drifting from a bakery door. Perhaps in the soft hum of early morning stillness. Perhaps in the gentle sound of a woman preparing dough with hands that have survived more winters than stories can remember. Tonight, I'll tell you her story. A story of a woman who rose before the sun, who waited for no applause, no glory, no recognition. A woman who saved lives without ever lifting a sword. A woman who fought loneliness, poverty, and the cold with nothing but flour, fire, and faith. Her bakery was tiny, barely the size of a small room. But inside it, she created warmth in a world that was often unbearably cold. She whispered comfort into every loaf, secrets into every crust, and prayers into every sunrise. Women of London would gather around her small table, sharing burdens they could not speak at home. Travelers sought her for directions. Children sought her for warmth. And broken-hearted souls sought her for comfort. But beneath her simple smile was a life filled with storms. A past she never spoke about. A loss she carried quietly. A love that London stole from her long ago. And a promise she guarded with the devotion of a woman who has endured far more than the world will ever know. Tonight, as you fall asleep, you will walk with her through fog-covered alleys. Hear the soft crackling of fresh bread cooling on wooden shelves. And feel the warmth of silence inside her tiny bakery, a silence that speaks louder than any words. This is not just a story about bread. It is a story about survival. About women history forgot, but whose fingerprints remain on the soul of a city. If you listen closely, you may hear her lantern flame flicker, guiding you gently into the calm of the night. Close your eyes. Slow your breathing. Let old London wrap around you like a warm blanket. Her story is about to begin. Before the church bells spoke, before the horses clattered through the narrow streets, before the market women called out the day's prices, there was only fog. Thick, soft, gray fog drifting over rooftops like a blanket pulled over a restless sleeper. And somewhere inside that sleeping city, down a crooked little lane called Rosemary Street, a single warm light always appeared first. A lantern, hanging from the window of a tiny bakery. People said that no matter how dark the winter was, no matter how thick the fog became, that lantern never died. It glowed like a quiet heartbeat, steady and faithful, a promise to everyone who walked past. Inside the bakery, the woman who kept that lantern lit stood over her wooden table, her sleeves folded up, her hands deep in a bowl of soft dough. Her name was Alara Finch. She was small in stature, but carried an air of strength people didn't always recognize. Her hair, dark chestnut, was usually tied in a simple braid resting over her shoulder. Flour dusted her clothes almost permanently, as if time itself had chosen to mark her as the keeper of warmth in a cold city. Every morning, before the sun dared climb over the chimneys, Alara kneaded dough with a slow, rhythmic patience. A push. A fold. A turn. A breeze. The bakery was her sanctuary. Her whole world, really. Outside, Rosemary Street was filled with the same tired souls every day. Factory men with soot on their faces, washerwomen with cracked hands, orphan boys running errands for a few coins. It was the late 1700s, and life was rarely kind to anyone who wasn't born into wealth. But inside the bakery, the world softened. The walls smelled of warm bread, honey, and old wood touched by years of gentle fire. The shelves held loaves cooling like sleeping children. The stone oven glowed like the heart of the whole shop. And beside the window sat a small wooden chair where tired women sometimes came to rest. Alara always saved that chair for them. Widows, abandoned mothers, tired sisters, young girls who had no one else, somehow they all found their way to her bakery. They came not only for bread but for comfort, for a moment of stillness, for warmth that the world refused to give them. And Alara, she listened. She never judged. She never hurried. She simply offered bread, a warm seat, and silence that said, "You are safe here." But behind her gentle presence, Alara carried a past she never spoke about. Only the walls of the bakery knew how many nights she cried quietly after closing the shop. Only the lantern above her window knew why she kept it burning every night. And only the dough beneath her hands knew the weight of the promises she made long ago. On this particular morning, as the fog pressed against the bakery windows, Alara felt a familiar ache in her chest, a quiet reminder of something or someone she once lost. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the scent of yeast and morning air. Just then, a soft knock rattled the bakery door. Once. Then twice. It was too early for customers. Much too early for deliveries. Alara wiped her hands on her apron and opened the door slightly. Standing in the fog was a young girl, no more than 17, wrapped in a thin gray shawl. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, her eyes swollen as if she had cried through the night. "Alara," the girl whispered. Alara's heart shifted. She knew this girl. She had seen her before, Lydia, a seamstress's daughter who lived 2 streets away. "Come inside, child," Alara said softly. "You're freezing." Lydia stepped in, clutching the shawl tightly around her trembling shoulders. She sat slowly on the small wooden chair by the window, the chair all broken souls found eventually. Alara poured her a warm cup of milk. "What happened?" she asked. Lydia swallowed hard. "My father, he hasn't returned since yesterday. He left for the docks before dawn. He never stays out this long. I waited all night, but—" Her voice cracked. Alara placed a gentle hand over hers. "Have you checked with the fishermen?" "They saw him," Lydia whispered. "At least, they think they did, but no one knows where he went after that." Fog clung to Lydia's clothes like shadows. Fear clung to her voice. Alara felt something old stir inside her, something she tried for years to bury. The feeling of watching someone disappear into the night and never return. She swallowed her own memories and said, "Eat first. You can't search for anyone with an empty stomach." Lydia nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. As the girl ate a piece of warm bread, Alara lit a second lantern, one she only used for emergencies. She hung it beside the first, letting both flames burn together. 2 lanterns meant one thing. Someone was lost, and someone was being waited for. Outside, the fog thickened, as if old London itself was holding its breath. Alara looked at Lydia and quietly whispered to herself, "I won't let this city swallow another soul." The dough on her table waited. The oven glowed softly. The lanterns burned brighter. And somewhere deep inside her chest, Alara felt something she hadn't felt in years. A past rising. A promise waking. A story beginning again. Fog pressed thickly against the bakery windows, turning the morning into a soft watercolor of blurred outlines. As the first hour of dawn passed, Rosemary Street remained unusually quiet, as if the city itself sensed something was wrong. Lydia sat on the wooden chair, her shawl clutched tight, eyes fixed on the lanterns flickering near the window. Alara watched her from behind the counter, kneading the dough slowly, hands moving on instinct, mind far away. Inside Alara's chest, 2 stories lived. One belonged to Lydia. The other belonged to a past she had sworn never to revisit. But sometimes, the world didn't ask permission before pulling old wounds open. Lydia sniffed softly and wiped her eyes. "Do you think something bad happened to him?" Alara paused her kneading. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she cleaned her hands and walked to Lydia, placing a warm loaf into her trembling palms. "Fear always speaks before truth," Alara said gently. "Eat, your strength matters." Lydia nodded, taking a shaky bite. Alara returned to her table and began preparing a small pouch, bread, warm cloth, and a candle. She tied it with sturdy twine. Lydia watched her. "You're going out?" she asked. Alara nodded. "But the bakeries?" "We'll wait," Alara said. "People can survive without bread for a morning. A girl cannot survive uncertainty." Lydia's lip trembled. "You'd do that, for me." Alara gave her a small, soft smile. "For anyone," she said. "But especially for a daughter waiting for her father." Lydia covered her mouth, tears spilling silently again. Alara moved to the back wall where an old cloak hung. Dust clung to the fabric. She hadn't worn it in years. She shook it gently, letting the dust fall, then draped it over her shoulders. As she fastened the clasp, her fingers brushed something cold. A small metal pin, hidden on the inside of the cloak. A circular emblem. Faded. Forgotten by most. But not by her. The emblem of the Women's Night Circle. A silent group of women who once protected others, when London's nights were too dangerous for men to walk alone. A group Alara had once belonged to. A group she had left behind. Lydia didn't notice the emblem. She was watching the fog gather outside the window. "Alara, thank you," she whispered. Alara simply nodded. Her eyes held a softness, but her posture carried a strength Lydia had never seen before. As she opened the bakery door, the fog spilled in like a living thing, curling around her ankles. She stepped out into it, and London swallowed her shape almost instantly. Outside, Rosemary Street. The cobblestones were slick with dew. Chimneys puffed faint trails of smoke. The smell of the river drifted faintly through the fog. Alara kept her steps measured, almost silent. She walked past the iron lampposts, the closed shutters, the stacked crates outside the fishmonger's shop. She paused once, laying her hand on the rough wooden door of a house she hadn't touched in years. It belonged to someone she once waited for. But not today. Today was about Lydia. Ilara inhaled deeply, letting the fog coat her lungs. Fog had always felt familiar, gentle yet haunting, the kind of quiet that held secrets. Down by the docks, lanterns glowed faintly on ships tied to moorings. Fishermen stood in clusters, muttering about the cold. Ilara approached them slowly. "Morning," she said quietly. They turned. For a moment, no one recognized her under the cloak. Then one of them squinted. Ilara Finch. His voice carried surprise. "You haven't been to the docks in years." "I need information," she said. "What sort?" She described Lydia's father, his clothes, his hat, the sack he usually carried. The men exchanged uneasy looks. One finally spoke. "We saw him," he said, "near the old pier before the fog thickened." "And after?" Ilara asked. The men shook their heads. "He walked toward the river path," another added. "Dangerous place before dawn." Ilara's heart tightened. "Did he look troubled?" she asked. "Not troubled," the fisherman said slowly, "but distracted, as if following something." Ilara's breath steadied. "That path." The path by the river was known for more than water. People got lost there. Sometimes by accident. Sometimes on purpose. "Thank you," she said, turning away. "Ilara," the fisherman called after her, "if you're going there, be careful." She didn't look back. The river paths. The fog here was thicker, colder, almost heavy. Trees leaned over the narrow trail, branches bending like old, tired arms. The ground felt softer beneath her feet, damp from river mist. She moved slowly, listening. Every sound mattered. A snapped twig. A distant splash. A whisper carried by the fog. Halfway down the path, she found something, a scrap of fabric caught on a thorn. A gray wool. Same as Lydia's father's coat. She touched it gently. Still warm, she whispered to herself. He had passed here recently. Ilara picked up her pace. At the bend in the path, she stopped suddenly. Footprints. Deep ones. Leading toward the river. And beside them, a second set. But these were smaller. Lighter. Not his. Her jaw tightened. Someone had been with him. But who? A memory flickered through her mind. Old rumors whispered among women in dark kitchens. Men going missing. Strange figures near the riverbank before sunrise. Shadowy shapes that moved in the fog. Ilara tightened her cloak. She followed the footprints, each step slow and deliberate. The river's soft murmur grew louder. Fog swirled in circles near the bank, thick as wool. Then she heard it. A faint sound. Awake. Muffled. Help. Ilara froze. The voice came from the reeds. She pushed through them quickly, heart pounding. And there, half submerged in icy water, was Lydia's father, gripping a fallen branch, his clothes soaked, his face pale as ash. Ilara, he gasped. She lunged toward him, grabbing his arm before the river pulled harder. Hold on, she said, voice steady. He coughed violently, water choking his words. They took my bag as the map. Ilara's breath stopped. What map? But he fainted before he could answer. Ilara looked up at the fog. Someone else was here. Watching. Listening. The air shifted. A shadow moved. The old emblem in her cloak pressed cold against her chest. The women's night circle had warned her once. When the river swallows men who should not be swallowed, the danger is never the water. Ilara tightened her grip on the man and said softly, "You're safe now." But the fog whispered a different truth. This was only the beginning. The river water was bitterly cold as it soaked through Ilara's sleeves, but she didn't loosen her grip. Lydia's father was unconscious, his breathing shallow, his skin turning the pale gray of early morning fog. The river wanted to keep him. She could feel the pull of the current as if it had hands of its own. "Not today," Ilara whispered. She dug her heels into the muddy bank, leaning with all her weight, and slowly, inch by inch, dragged him toward the shore. Her muscles burned, her ribs screamed, but she didn't stop. The river had taken enough from her life. She wouldn't let it take this man, too. When she finally pulled him fully onto the bank, she collapsed beside him, chest heaving. Her breath formed small clouds in the frigid air. For a moment, the world was painfully silent. Just the river's gentle lap. Just the soft hiss of the fog. Then, as if reminding her that the city didn't sleep for long, a church bell in the distance rang once. Ilara placed her hand on the man's chest. A faint rise. Then another. He was alive. But she wasn't alone. From behind a twisted ash tree, something shifted, subtle, quiet, but unmistakable. A shadow pulling itself back into deeper fog. Ilara didn't turn her head. She listened. A footstep. Soft. Deliberate. Whoever it was, they didn't run. They watched. Ilara tightened the cloak around her shoulders, feeling the cold metal of the emblem press against her skin. She stood slowly, her breath steady, and scanned the fog. "I know you're here," she said calmly. A silence. Only the river responded. She stepped closer to the trees. "Whatever you took from him, return it," she said, "before this becomes something you regret." A faint voice drifted from the fog, neither male nor female, more like a whisper dragged across gravel. It was never his to keep. Ilara's heart tightened. The words. The tone. The cold certainty in the voice. She knew that sound. She hadn't heard it in years. But she knew it. Before she could respond, the fog shifted again. And the shadow vanished. Ilara's pulse quickened. Not from fear. From recognition. She knelt beside Lydia's father, slid her arms under his, and began the slow journey back toward the city. He was heavier now, soaked clothes weighing him down. Her shoulders burned with each step. But she kept moving. The fog parted for her like a curtain, curling around her legs like wary ghosts. Returning to Rosemary Street. By the time she reached closer to the bakery, a few shopkeepers were beginning to stir. Doors creaked open. Water splashed as women washed steps. The first coal carts rolled down the street. When Ilara turned onto Rosemary Street, Lydia burst from the bakery door, shawl still around her shoulders. "Papa," she cried, racing toward them. Her voice cracked with fear and relief. Ilara tightened her grip and lowered the man gently into Lydia's arms. "He's alive," she said softly, "but cold and exhausted. Bring blankets." Lydia's tears came fast, falling onto her father's soaked clothes as she held him. "Ilara, how do I ever thank you?" Ilara brushed Lydia's hair back. "By keeping him warm," she whispered. "Go, quickly." Lydia helped her father inside while Ilara closed the door behind them, leaning against it for a moment. Her legs trembled, not from the weight she carried, but from the voice she heard at the river. The voice of someone she once trusted. Someone she once stood beside. Someone who was never supposed to return. Ilara shook off the thought and walked to the back room, grabbing a thick woolen blanket and herbal tincture she made for fever and chill. She returned to the front. Lydia's father lay on the floor near the oven's gentle heat. His skin had regained a slight flush, his breathing steadier now. Lydia knelt beside him, holding his hand. "Ilara," he kept mumbling about something, Lydia said. Something he lost, something important. Ilara's pulse skipped. "A map," Lydia whispered. Did he mean a real map? Ilara went still. "A hand-drawn one," Lydia added. "He wouldn't tell me more, said it wasn't safe." Ilara lowered herself onto a small stool. "I need you to tell me exactly what he said." Lydia nodded. "He told me, if anything happens to me, protect the map. It leads to a truth they don't want the city to know." Ilara closed her eyes. "A truth. A map. The rivers." A shadowed voice. Pieces of an old world she left behind began pulling themselves together. "Ilara," Lydia said, frightened, "what does it mean?" Ilara looked up, her eyes softer but heavier. "It means," she whispered, "that trouble didn't find your father by accident." Lydia swallowed. "You think someone did this to him?" Ilara nodded slowly. "And whoever it was is connected to something I hoped was gone forever." Lydia's hands shook. "What do we do now?" Ilara stood, the lantern flame reflecting in her eyes. "We keep watch, we listen, and we wait." The lanterns of the women's night circle. When the bakery closed that evening, Ilara took a small key from a jar on the shelf. She went to the back, opened an old wooden box, and removed an item wrapped in cloth. A second emblem. The twin of the one hidden in her cloak. The emblem of the circle. She placed it on the table. For a long moment, she just stared at it. Years ago, she was part of a small underground network of women who protected their neighborhoods when London was too dangerous, when justice ignored the poor, and women were left vulnerable after sunset. They worked in secrecy, in shadows, in silence, until the circle was betrayed by someone from within. The circle broke apart. Women disappeared. Ilara barely escaped. She left that life behind. But now, a shadow from the river. Words spoken in the fog. A stolen map. A nearly drowned man. It wasn't coincidence. It was a message. One meant for her. Ilara wrapped the emblem again and hid it under a loose floorboard. Not yet, she told herself. I'm not ready to return to that world. But the world, it seemed, was returning to her. Night falls on old London. By the time the fog returned for the night, Lydia's father was awake enough to whisper a few words. "Ilara," he croaked. She knelt beside him. "What happened on the river path?" she asked. His eyes filled with fear. "They wanted the map. They knew I had it." "Who?" Ilara asked. He swallowed painfully. I couldn't see their face, but they said something. What did they say? He looked directly at her then. They said, "Tell the baker woman her past belongs to us now." Ilara felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. The fog outside the window thickened. Somewhere in the darkness of London, a shadow smiled. The map was gone. The city was stirring. The circle's ghosts were waking. And Ilara Finch, the quiet baker woman of Rosemary Street, was about to step back into a life she promised never to face again. Night deepened over Rosemary Street, and with it came the familiar hush of old London. Chimneys exhaled slow streams of smoke, carriage wheels creaked distantly over cobblestone, and fog crawled down alleys like a living creature settling into its home. Inside the small bakery, Ilara sat alone at her wooden table, a single candle flickering beside her. Its soft flame painted long shadows across the flour-dusted walls, making the room feel older than it was, as if it, too, remembered secrets. On the floor near the oven, Lydia's father slept, wrapped in blankets. Lydia rested on the chair by the window, exhaustion pulling her eyelids closed. The lantern above the bakery door flickered steadily, like a guardian heartbeat. But Ilara sat awake, her hands clasped tightly, her gaze fixed on the tiny scrap of fabric she had found by the river. The gray wool was still damp, still carrying the scent of cold fog and river water. Her breath was slow, controlled. But her thoughts were sharp. The voice she heard that morning, the whisper from the fog, it haunted every corner of her mind. She hadn't heard that voice in over a decade, and she had prayed never to hear it again. Ilara pressed her thumb against the scrap of fabric, and a memory rose like fog from the past. Flashback 10 years earlier. Ilara was younger then, her braid darker and tighter, her resolve newly sharpened. The women's night circle met in secret rooms beneath taverns, in abandoned warehouses, in attics lit by a single candle. They were women from all walks of life. A seamstress, a midwife, a schoolteacher, a butcher's daughter. And Ilara, a young baker's apprentice with a fierce sense of justice. Their purpose was simple: protect the vulnerable when the city refused to. Women walking home alone after dark. Children without guardians. Widows threatened by debt collectors. Girls cornered in alleys. The circle intervened silently, invisibly. They were the unseen backbone of the night. The emblem hidden in Ilara's cloak was once her pride. A mark of unity. A mark of courage. Until the betrayal. A woman named Marian Gray had joined the circle 2 winters after Ilara. A quiet, soft-spoken, eyes like river stones, calm on the surface, unreadable beneath. The others trusted her. Ilara hesitated. And Ilara had been right. Marian sold information about the circle to men who feared women organizing. She exposed their roots, their safe houses, their hidden signals. In one night, multiple members vanished, taken, threatened, silenced. The circle was dismantled. Ilara barely escaped with her life. And Marian disappeared. No one saw her again. A present. Now, sitting in her quiet bakery, Ilara let out a slow breath. It can't be her, she whispered to herself, though fear pricked her skin. Because the voice she heard in the fog, the voice that said the map wasn't his to keep, had the same cold certainty. A voice without warmth. Without guilt. Without humanity. Ilara looked toward Lydia's father, sleeping under blankets. Why did he have a map? What truth did it lead to? And why would someone like Marion want it? The questions twisted inside her like knots. A soft tap at the window broke her thoughts. Ilara stood quickly, checking the door latch. Lydia sat up abruptly, startled. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Ilara nodded. Another tap. Deliberate. Soft. Not wind. Not by chance. Ilara walked to the door and peeked through the small slit beside the frame. A folded piece of paper lay under the lantern's warm glow. No footsteps. No silhouette walking away. Just fog. Ilara's stomach tightened. She opened the door slowly, stepped out, and retrieved the paper. Lydia hovered behind her, shivering. "What is it?" Lydia asked softly. Ilara didn't answer. She unfolded the note inside. It contained only 2 words. The note trembled slightly in Ilara's hand, not because of the cold, but because the handwriting was unmistakable. Sharp, precise, elegant in a calculated, almost cruel way. 2 words. Only 2. Not finished. Lydia leaned closer. "Ilara, what does it say?" Ilara folded the note silently, her jaw tightening. "It means," she said softly, "that whoever came for your father will come again." Lydia's hand flew to her mouth. "But why us? We don't have enemies." Ilara shook her head. "This isn't about you," she whispered. "It's about something older, something that should have stayed buried." Lydia stepped back, fear rising in her throat. "Ilara, you're scaring me." Ilara forced her voice to soften. "I won't let anything happen to you, or to him." She set the note aside on the table, but her eyes didn't leave it. Her thoughts spiraled. Not finished. The last message she had received from Marion, 10 years ago, was signed the same way. Marion had used those words as her signature. Her declaration. Her warning. The bakery suddenly felt smaller. The shadows deeper. The fog outside thicker. Ilara's past wasn't just returning. It was standing at her doorstep. Later that night, Lydia eventually drifted into uneasy sleep on the small wooden chair. Her father lay wrapped in blankets, breathing heavily but stable. The oven's warmth spread through the bakery, giving the night a gentle glow. But Ilara couldn't rest. She paced slowly in the dim light, her fingers brushing the old emblem hidden under the floorboard. The same emblem Marion once wore. Her thoughts were relentless. Why take a map? Why target a poor man? What truth does the map hold? And why involve Ilara after all these years? Then another thought hit her. What if the map wasn't just valuable? What if it was dangerous? She sat at the table, rubbing her temples as memories crept back. There had been rumors years ago, whispered quietly among women who moved through the city's hidden networks. Rumors of a secret beneath London's streets. A hidden path. A hidden vault. A hidden truth. Something people would kill for. Ilara pressed her fingers against the wooden table. Was that what this map led to? She didn't want to believe it. She wanted to stay the quiet baker, the woman who needed dough and peace and kept a lantern burning for wandering souls. But fate had other plans. A soft knock at the door. Not a loud knock. Not a frantic one. A single, gentle tap. Ilara's head snapped toward the sound. Her heartbeat quickened. Lydia stirred but didn't wake. The knock came again. Slow. Measured. Ilara moved toward the door, careful not to make noise. She looked through the side slit. And froze. A tall woman stood outside, hood pulled over her head, cloak dark as night, fog curling around her boots like it recognized her. The lantern light cast just enough glow to reveal her face. Angular. Calm. Beautiful in a cold, distant way. Eyes the color of river stones. Ilara's breath caught. It was her. Marion Gray. After 10 years. Standing outside her bakery, as if she had never vanished. Ilara opened the door, only a crack. Why are you here? She whispered, her voice shaking despite herself. Marion smiled softly, the way someone smiles when they know they have already won. Ilara Finch, she said, her voice smooth as slipping ice. I wondered how long it would take for you to recognize my handwriting. Ilara narrowed her eyes. Stay where you are. Marion lifted her hands slowly, palms forward. I'm not here to fight. Then leave. I can't. Why not? Because, Marion said, stepping slightly closer as fog swirled around her ankles. We're not finished. Ilara's grip tightened on the door. What do you want? Marion tilted her head. The map. Ilara stiffened. Marion's smile widened. So you do know what it is? Ilara said nothing. Marion's eyes flicked to the lantern above the bakery door. You still keep it burning, she murmured. How nostalgic. Say what you came to say, Ilara demanded. Marion's voice lowered, becoming almost tender. There are truths beneath this city that should never have surfaced. That man, she nodded toward the bakery interior, stumbled upon something meant to be forgotten. Ilara's jaw clenched. And you pushed him into the river. That depends, Marion said, one eyebrow lifting faintly, on whether you believe he slipped or whether the fog was kinder to him than the truth would have been. Ilara felt rage rise, not loud rage, but heavy, controlled, dangerous rage. Stay away from this family. Marion's expression didn't change. Find the map, Ilara, she said softly, turning to leave. Before someone far less merciful comes looking for it. Ilara stepped forward. Where is it? Marion paused. That, she said with a soft laugh, is the game. Then she melted into the fog, vanishing as though the night swallowed her whole. Inside the bakery. Ilara shut the door and locked it firmly. Her hands trembled. Her heart hammered. She pressed her back against the door, breathing slowly. Lydia's father groaned in his sleep. Lydia shifted in the chair, unaware of the danger standing just beyond the bakery walls. Ilara whispered into the dim silence. The circle isn't dead after all. For the first time in years, she realized something. She couldn't face this alone. And old London, with its fog, its secrets, its sleeping shadows, was waking again. Morning crept slowly into Rosemary Street. Not with sunlight, because the fog was too heavy for that, but with the muted blue-gray glow that old London often wore like an old shawl. Inside the bakery, everything was quiet. Lydia slept curled in the wooden chair, fingers still wrapped around her father's hand. Her father breathed deeply now, recovering steadily thanks to warmth and rest. The oven stones held the last of the night's heat, filling the bakery with a comforting haze. But Alara hadn't slept. Not for a second. She sat at her table in the dim light, her cloak still wrapped around her shoulders, her braid loose from the tension of the night. In front of her lay the folded note, those two words carved like a scar across the page. Not finished. Her eyes stayed fixed on it, unblinking, as if she were trying to read something hidden behind the ink. She replayed Marian's face over and over. The soft smile. The cold voice. The calm confidence. The way she spoke, as if she were greeting an old friend. Or warning an old enemy. Alara rubbed her aching temples. She used to know Marian better than anyone. She used to trust her. Wrongly. And Marian always had one talent. She never appeared unless the stakes were high. Or unless she had already planned 10 steps ahead. If Marian was back, it meant the danger was far greater than a stolen map. It meant that something was moving underground again. Something dark. Something deliberate. Something that needed Alara for reasons she didn't understand yet. She glanced at Lydia's father. He mumbled quietly in his sleep, fingers twitching as if reaching for something. Alara, he whispered, voice cracking. Alara rose immediately and knelt beside him. I'm here, she said softly. You're safe. He shook his head faintly, eyelids trembling. No, no one is safe, not while she's searching. Alara's breath froze. Who, she asked, who is searching? His lips parted, a single word slipping out like a falling leaf. A gray. Alara's chest tightened. So he had seen her. Or someone working for her. Lydia stirred awake just then, blinking at the morning haze. Papa, she whispered. He looked at her weakly, eyes softening. You're safe, he breathed. Good. Lydia kissed his forehead, relief spilling across her face. Alara found you, she whispered. You're going to be all right. But Alara could see the truth in the man's exhausted expression. He feared something far beyond the cold river. He feared the woman who had orchestrated his fall into it. The question of the map. When Lydia's father regained a bit more strength, Alara gave him warm broth in a small wooden cup. His hands trembled as he held it, but he drank slowly. After a moment, he said, I didn't want to be involved. I didn't know what the map was. Lydia squeezed his hand. Papa, start from the beginning. He nodded, breath shaky. It began a week ago. A stranger came to the docks, well-dressed, quiet. He carried a satchel with old scrolls, maps, things written in symbols I've never seen. He asked for workers to help unload crates. Alara leaned forward. Did you know who he was? No, he whispered, but he paid double. That alone drew a crowd. Alara nodded. Money was powerful bait in London's poorer districts. He noticed I had good handwriting, he continued. He asked if I could help him copy some of the scrolls onto fresh parchment. Simple copying, nothing more. I agreed. And the map? Alara asked quietly. The man swallowed. One scroll looked different. Older, it had markings that didn't match the others. Lines under the city, tunnels, chambers, symbols near the riverbank. Alara's heart began to race. Old London had tunnels. Ancient ones. Rumored ones. But no one knew exactly where they led. Except, perhaps, someone holding the original map. I copied it, he whispered. And when he wasn't looking, I kept the copy. Something in my gut told me the original shouldn't belong to him. Ilara closed her eyes. And then, she asked. Then, he said breathlessly, I overheard him speaking to a woman. Lydia stiffened. A woman's. He nodded weakly. Her voice was cold, sharp. She asked if he was sure no one had seen the map. He said yes, she didn't believe him. Ilara's fingers dug into the wooden stool. Describe her, she said. I didn't see her face clearly through the fog, but her voice. He paused, shuddering. Her voice sounded like she wasn't afraid of anything. Ilara felt her throat tighten. Marion. She didn't need to hear more. How did she know you had the copy? Ilara asked. A weak, bitter smile crossed his lips. She said, men who lie always forget their footprints. His voice lowered. She found me before sunrise. She wanted the map. I ran, she chased. I slipped, or maybe she pushed. I don't remember. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. Oh, papas. Ilara exhaled slowly. So Marion wasn't acting alone. And she was chasing something buried beneath the city. Something the map revealed. Something dangerous. A promise in the quiet. As morning light pressed softly against the bakery windows, Ilara stood and straightened her apron, though she hadn't baked anything. Rest, she told Lydia's father. Gain your strength, I'll keep watch. Lydia reached for Ilara's hand. Ilara, what are we going to do? Ilara gave her a small, steady smile. We will survive. How can you be sure? Lydia whispered. Ilara turned toward the lantern outside, the lantern she had kept burning every night for years. It flickered gently, its glow reflecting in her eyes. Because, she said softly, I've walked this darkness before. Lydia swallowed hard. And Marion's. Ilara's smile faded, replaced by something older. Something sharper. She thinks I'm still the woman she left behind, Ilara said, but she's wrong. Lydia inhaled unsteadily. Ilara, will you tell me who she is? Ilara looked into the fog beyond the window. One day, she whispered. Oh, but not today. The quiet before the shift. The bakery door remained locked. No morning customers came. No fresh bread filled the shelves. Instead, Ilara took out her old cloak again, brushing her fingers over the hidden emblem. She wasn't putting it on. Not yet. But soon. The city outside slowly woke. Footsteps echoed on cobblestones. Coal smoke drifted through the air. Women opened shutters to shake out cloths. And yet, something was different. The fog seemed thicker, heavier. Watching. Ilara felt it too. Old London was holding its breath, as though waiting for the next move. As though waiting. For her. She whispered to herself. If Marion wants the map, I need to find it first. The lantern flickered again, as if in agreement. Ilara lifted her cloak. Her story was waking. And this time, she wasn't going to run from it. The fog thickened again as midday approached, turning the sunlight into a pale whisper rather than a warm presence. Rosemary Street seemed to float in a world between morning and night. None of the usual liveliness returned. Shops opened late. Women spoke in quieter tones. Even the horses pulling carts moved slower, as though something in the air warned them to tread carefully. Inside the bakery, Alara stood near the small window, watching the shifting fog as if waiting for it to reveal something. Lydia tended to her father, adjusting the blankets, brushing his hair back, whispering small comforts. The warmth of the oven wasn't enough to soothe the chill that had settled into the bakery. Lydia finally gathered the courage to speak. "Alara, what if she comes back?" Alara didn't move from the window. "As she will." Lydia swallowed, fear tightening her breath. "And then what do we do?" Alara touched the cold glass with her fingertips. "You stay inside, and you don't open the door for anyone." Lydia hugged her shawl around herself. "You're talking like you're planning something." Alara finally turned, eyes steady and calm. "I'm going to find the map." Lydia's eyes widened. "No, please no. Papa almost died because of it." Alara walked closer and placed both hands gently on Lydia's shoulders. "Your father got caught in something much bigger than he understood. Marion won't stop searching. Others won't either, if we don't find it first." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Oh, this won't end." Lydia's voice broke. "But why you? Why does she care about you?" Alara's jaw tightened. "Because Marion and I share a past she would rather bury." Lydia blinked, confusion and fear mixing across her face. "But you're just a baker." Alara smiled, sadly, almost apologetically. "I was many things before I baked bread." Lydia stepped back slightly, as if seeing Alara for the first time. "You were part of something dangerous." Alara nodded once. "Dangerous only to those who wished to keep power for themselves, but protective to those who had none." Lydia let the words sink in. "You were part of a secret group," she whispered. "Oh, yes." "And she was too." "Oh, yes." "And now she's hunting you." Alara didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her hands, steady, practiced, strong. "She's hunting the map," Alara corrected softly. "But she knows I'm the only one who can find it before she does." Lydia's breath trembled. "So where is it?" Alara exhaled slowly. "If your father hid it, he hid it somewhere meaningful. Somewhere he thought no one would look. Somewhere safe." Lydia nodded slowly, thinking, then said, "He spent most of his time by the docks." Alara shook her head. "Too exposed." "He walked past the church every day." "Too many eyes." "He used to sit at the riverbank at dusk." "Too dangerous." Lydia frowned, frustration mixing with fear. "Then where?" Alara looked toward the bakery door. "Where do men go when they're hiding something, but trying not to hide from themselves?" Lydia blinked. "I don't know." Alara's eyes drifted upward. "To the only place that feels like home." "The search begins." Alara wrapped her cloak around her shoulders, fastening the clasp with steady hands. She took a lantern from the wall, lit it carefully, and held it at her side. "I'll be back before sunset," she said. Lydia's voice trembled. "Alara, please don't go alone." Alara paused. "I have to." "But what if she finds you?" Alara gave her a reassuring smile. "As she won't." Lydia stared into her eyes, then whispered, You're not just a baker, are you? Ilara's smile didn't fade, but her eyes darkened slightly. I am now, she said softly, but once I was someone Marion should have feared. Lydia hugged her suddenly, tightly, desperately. Come back, she whispered. Ilara gently touched her hair. I will. Then she stepped outside into the fog. Rosemary Street in fog. The fog clung to Ilara's cloak as she walked, swirling around her boots like restless spirits. The lantern cast a small halo of amber light in front of her, barely cutting through the white. Old London always felt different in fog. Quieter. Older. As if the dead walked alongside the living. Ilara moved carefully, listening for every sound. She passed the butcher shop, where a stray cat curled on a wooden crate. She passed the lamppost near the tailor's window, where falling water dripped rhythmically from the gutter. She passed two old women whispering near their door, voices low with worry. Their eyes followed Ilara. People always watched her when danger lurked. They sensed something about her they couldn't name. Not fear. Not authority. But readiness. As if she carried a blade in her pocket. Not of steel, but of certainty. Ilara walked toward a small wooden house near the end of the street, the home of Lydia's father. Inside the fisherman's house. The door creaked as she pushed it open. The room smelled faintly of salt, rope, and river mud. A coat hung by the door. Fishing nets lay coiled near the window. Boots stood drying by the fire. Ilara lifted her lantern, letting its glow stretch across the room. She examined the shelves first. Ropes, small carved trinkets, coins, and unfinished wooden pipe. Nothing unusual. She searched the drawers next, paper scraps, a knife, worn gloves. Still nothing. Then she noticed something subtle. A smudge of river, mud near the floorboard under the window. She knelt down, pressing her fingers lightly along the wooden board. It shifted. Ilara lifted it, revealing a small compartment. Inside lay a square piece of cloth, wrapped tightly around something flat. Her heart began to pound. She unwrapped it slowly. And there it was. A parchment. Old. Yellowed. Hand-drawn. Lines and symbols covered its surface. Intricate, looping ancient. Under the city of London. A network of tunnels. And 3 marked locations. One near the riverbank. One beneath an old chapel. One beneath. Ilara's breath stopped. One beneath Rosemary Street. Her street. Her bakery. The map shook in her hands. Why was her home marked? Why did Marion want this? What lay beneath her bakery that she never knew? The sound in the fog. Before she could process another thought, a floorboard creaked behind her. Ilara froze. Someone was inside the house. She didn't turn immediately. Instead, she lowered the lantern slowly and whispered, I know you're there. A silence. Then a familiar voice drifted through the dark. Soft, cold, cruelly calm. I told you we weren't finished. Ilara closed her eyes for one breath. Then she stood and turned slowly. Marion Gray stood in the doorway, fog swirling around her like a cloak. Her lips curved into a quiet smile. You've always been good at finding things others can't. Ilara held the map tightly. I won't let you take this. Marion stepped closer. You don't even know what it is. Ilara's voice was steady. Then tell me. Marion's smile deepened. When the time is right. Ilara's pulse quickened. And until then. Marion's eyes glowed like cold iron. You'll stay alive. Only as long as you keep making the right choices. Ilara didn't blink. The only choice I'll make, she said softly, is to stop you. Marion leaned in, whispering. Try. Then she vanished into the fog. So quietly that even the lantern flame didn't flicker, leaving Ilara alone with the map and a truth she could no longer avoid. The past had woken, and it was walking straight toward her bakery. Ilara stood alone in the fisherman's tiny house long after Marion's presence had vanished from the doorway. The fog seemed to breathe in her place, filling the room with a coldness that clung to her skin. The lantern flickered weakly in her hand, its fragile light trembling against the walls. The map, still clenched tightly in her other hand, felt heavier than parchment should ever feel. Heavier with danger. Heavier with memory. Heavier with meaning she had not yet fully allowed herself to face. She exhaled shakily. One mark beneath the river. One beneath an old chapel. One beneath her bakery. Why? Why hers? Why Rosemary Street? Her heart pounded with a slow, muted thud, like distant footsteps in an empty hallway. She wrapped the map carefully back in the cloth, tucked it deep against her chest inside her cloak, and left the fisherman's home, locking the door behind her. Outside, the fog swallowed her instantly. Walking through the fog, Ilara walked slowly through the narrow streets, the lantern casting only a small, trembling circle of golden light. The rest of the world remained dark, lost in white. Her boots tapped softly on the cobblestones. Tap. 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 It was the only sound besides her breath. Old London in fog always felt like it was listening. Its alleys holding their breath. Its rooftops leaning closer. Its windows blinking quietly as she passed. She clutched the map tighter. Marion Gray was back. The circle's old enemy. The manipulator. The betrayer. And she had said something that Ilara couldn't shake. You don't even know what it is. Ilara's jaw tightened. She knew exactly what it was. A map beneath a forgotten city always meant one thing. Secrets that history had tried to bury. Secrets someone powerful wanted forgotten. Secrets someone dangerous wanted found. And Ilara was now tangled at the center of all of it. Returning to the bakery. When Rosemary Street finally emerged through the fog, the lantern above the bakery glowed like a tiny beacon. The warm flicker reflected off the hazy air, welcoming her home in the gentlest way. But tonight, the lantern felt different. Less like a guide. More like a warning. Ilara stepped through the door and locked it behind her. Lydia looked up immediately from her father's side. You're back, she cried, rushing to her. Ilara smiled gently and brushed Lydia's cheek, though her own hands were still trembling. I told you I would return. Lydia looked worriedly at her face. You look shaken. What happened? Ilara didn't answer right away. Instead, she removed her cloak, carefully unwrapped the cloth bundle, and placed the map gently on the table. Lydia gasped. Is that? Ilara nodded. The map your father copied. Lydia touched it with trembling fingertips. It looks ancient. It is, Ilara whispered. Much older than our city, older than the docks, older than most of London itself. Lydia's father stirred at the sound of their voices. His eyes fluttered open weakly. Ilara, he rasped, you found it. Ilara knelt beside him. Yes, but there's something we must discuss. Something dangerous. His eyes clouded with fear. She came, didn't she? Ilara nodded. Lydia looked between them, scared. Who exactly is she? Ilara considered her answer. Marion Gray was not a simple explanation. Marion was a lifetime of shadows. A name spoken in whispers, even among brave women. A ghost with a heartbeat. Finally, Ilara spoke softly. She is someone who knows London's darkness better than anyone should. Someone who hunted the circle years before you were born. Someone who uses secrets the way others use knives. Lydia swallowed hard. You think she'll come here? Ilara touched the map. She already has. Silence fell heavy in the small bakery. Lydia looked at the parchment again, her voice trembling. What does the map show? Ilara pointed to the marks. 3 circles connected by thin, winding lines like veins. This, she said, is a drawing of the hidden passages beneath old London, places built before there were streets or markets or docks. Why would anyone want this? Lydia whispered. Ilara hesitated. Then she said, quietly, "A truth." Lydia looked up. Truth about what? Ilara reached to the corner of the map, brushing her thumb over a faded symbol. A symbol she hadn't seen in years. A symbol she never wanted to see again. A symbol used by the Circle in its earliest days. Not as a logo, but as a warning. Her breath caught. This, she whispered, isn't just a map of tunnels. Lydia leaned closer. It's a map of what? Ilara felt her heartbeat echo in her chest. It's a map of everything London tried to forget. Lydia's eyes widened. About the Circle. Ilara's voice dropped to a soft, fragile whisper. About the women who were hidden. And the power they guarded. And the secrets they protected beneath the city. Lydia's breath hitched. You were part of this. Ilara's eyes softened with weight and regret. I was part of a world where women were the keepers of truth. A truth so dangerous that it had to be buried underground. Lydia's father coughed weakly. That's why she wants it. Ilara nodded. Marion isn't after treasure. She is after control. A long silence filled the room. Only the crackle of the oven stones, fading with the night, broke it. Finally, Lydia whispered. So what do we do? Ilara stood slowly. Her shadow stretched long across the flower-covered floor. We do what the Circle taught us, she said softly. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. She folded the map carefully and slid it inside the hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. And then, she added quietly, we find out what lies beneath Rosemary Street. Lydia's eyes widened. Under your bakery. Ilara nodded. I always wondered why the ground felt hollow. The lantern flickered again, throwing long shadows across the walls. Shadows that seemed to move on their own. Ilara felt a chill crawl up her spine. Marian was watching. Somewhere in the fog. Somewhere close. But this time, Ilara wasn't hiding. "Tomorrow at dawn," she whispered, "we go below." Lydia gasped softly. "Into the tunnels." Ilara nodded. "Oh yes. If the truth lies in darkness, then that's where we must go." The bakery grew quiet. A heavy, a sacred, ready. The lantern outside swayed in the wind. The fog thickened. And far away, almost inaudible, a woman's laugh drifted through the streets. Soft, cold, familiar. Marian Gray was waiting. And the night of truth was approaching. Dawn approached without color. No gold. No pink. No promise of warmth. Only a pale, diluted gray that settled over Rosemary Street like a blanket left out in the cold. The lantern outside the bakery flickered weakly in the wind, its flame fighting to stay alive as the fog pressed heavily around it. Inside, the bakery was silent except for the slow breathing of Lydia and her father, who both slept at last after a long, restless night. But Ilara was awake. Sitting at her table, hands clasped, eyes open, watching the lines of the map in her mind even when it was hidden beneath the floor. 3 marks. The river paths. The old chapel. Rosemary Street. And beneath her bakery. Something forgotten. Something dangerous. Something connected to the circle. For years, she had kneaded dough above this floor. Baked bread. Listened to people's stories. Offered comfort and warmth. All while something ancient slept beneath her feet. Her breath shook slightly. She had always sensed something. A faint echo under the boards. A hollow resonance when she walked late at night. As if the earth beneath her wasn't solid stone, but a waiting darkness. Now she knew why. Lydia stirred in the corner, blinking awake. Her eyes found Ilara immediately. "Ilara, it's morning," she whispered, voice still weak with sleep. Ilara nodded. "We should begin." Lydia swallowed hard. "You really think the entrance is here?" Ilara stood and walked to the far corner of the bakery, the place where a wooden cupboard stood, filled with sacks of flour, jars of spice, and small woven baskets. "Help me move this," Ilara said softly. Together, they pushed the cupboard away from the wall. It scraped lightly against the floor, revealing a patch of old stone that looked different from the rest. Older. Darker. Untouched. Lydia frowned. "I never noticed this before." "Most wouldn't," Ilara replied. "Some doors don't want to be seen." She knelt and gently brushed the dust away. Beneath it was a faint carving, nearly invisible, worn by time. A symbol. A circle. 3 lines. 2 dots. Lydia touched it lightly. "What does it mean?" Ilara exhaled. "It's a mark of the circle," she whispered. "A signal, it means, below lies the truth." Lydia covered her mouth. "Your group built this." Ilara shook her head. "No, the circle found it. We didn't build what's underneath London. That was done long before us." Lydia's eyes widened. "By who?" "Ilara," a weak voice called behind them. They turned. Lydia's father had woken and was struggling to sit upright. You shouldn't be up, Lydia urged. He shook his head stubbornly. You can't go down there alone. Ilara approached him gently. You need rest. He grabbed her wrist weakly. You don't understand, those tunnels, they aren't just passageways. They're traps. Secrets were buried down there because they were meant to stay buried. Ilara's voice was calm. That's why I'm going. He shook his head harder. No, Ilara, you don't know what Marion is capable of. Ilara's expression darkened. I know exactly what she's capable of. Lydia's father's eyes filled with fear. She's not the only one down there. Ilara froze. What do you mean? He shut his eyes tightly, reliving something painful. When I copied the map, I heard them talking, Marion and the stranger. He mentioned a group, a hidden order, people who have been watching the tunnels for generations. They think something down there belongs to them. Lydia's voice trembled. Something like what? He whispered. The weapons. Ilara's stomach tightened. Impossible. Unthinkable. Yet, why else would the map mark 3 locations? Why else would Marion try to drown him? Why else would someone resurrect a network that had been dead for decades? Your father told you the truth, Ilara whispered. The map is a key, and those tunnels are a vault. Lydia clutched her shawl, fear spreading across her features. But why beneath your bakery? Ilara closed her eyes. She remembered something. A night years ago, when she was barely 20. A circle meeting. A whispered conversation between elders. Rosemary Street stands on an old crossing, she murmured. A place where ancient paths converged. And beneath it, Lydia asked. Ilara opened her eyes. Something the city feared enough to hide, and something Marion wants enough to kill for. Lydia swallowed. Ilara, we don't have to go down there today. Ilara shook her head slowly. If Marion is moving, we're already late. She placed her hands on the stone, marked with the circle symbol. The stone groaned softly. Moved slightly. Shifted under her touch. Lydia gasped. Ilara. With a final push, the stone slid open like a door, revealing a dark, narrow staircase descending into blackness. Cold air rushed upward, smelling of earth, time, and secrets never meant to see the light. Lydia clutched Ilara's arm. Ilara, please, don't go alone. Ilara turned, her eyes soft. You'll stay up here with your father. Guard the bakery, guard the map. If I don't return by sunset, lock the door, don't wait for me. Lydia shook her head, tears welling. No, I won't let you go down there by yourself. Ilara cupped her cheek gently. You must, you're brave, Lydia, and your father needs you. Lydia's breath broke. What if something happens to you? Ilara smiled. A tired, quiet, brave smile. Then my lantern will go out. And yours must stay lit. A tear slid down Lydia's face. Ilara wiped it away. Without another word, she lifted the lantern from the table, stepped toward the dark opening, and placed one foot on the first stone stair. The fog outside sighed. The bakery grew silent. The air thickened with waiting. Lydia's father whispered hoarsely. God help you, Ilara Finch. Ilara looked back once, offering them one final, steady smile. Then she descended the steps. Into the darkness. Into the earth. Into the forgotten veins of old London. The stone door slid, closed behind her with a heavy sigh. And for the first time in years, the bakery above felt truly empty. The stairway spiraled downward in silence, carved from stone so old that even London's earliest builders had forgotten its origin. Ilara's lantern cast a trembling gold circle on the curved walls, illuminating dust that drifted like tiny ghost motes in the still air. The deeper she went, the quieter the world became, until even the distant hum of Rosemary Street vanished completely. Only her footsteps remained. Soft taps on stone, measured steady, echoing in a tunnel that felt more like a memory than a place. When she reached the bottom, the temperature dropped sharply. Cold seeped into her bones like an old truth. Ilara lifted her lantern higher. The tunnel stretched left and right, long-arched, ancient. She took a deep breath. "Below lies the truth," she whispered. And she stepped forward. The tunnels of old London. The walls were lined with faint markings, symbols half erased by time. Some she recognized from the circle's teachings. Some she didn't. The air had a strange, quiet weight to it, like the silence of a church after midnight, filled with things unsaid. Her lantern flickered as she walked past small alcoves. Spaces that once held scrolls, or tools, or perhaps even people. The ground beneath her was uneven, as if the earth had shifted many times through the centuries. Every few steps, a drip of water echoed somewhere in the distance. Sometimes from the ceiling, sometimes from deeper still. The tunnels weren't empty. They held memory. Ilara's boots scuffed against something small. She knelt and found a rusted metal clasp, one identical to those the circle used to seal messages decades ago. The sight tightened her chest. "How long has this place been waiting?" she whispered. She stood and continued walking. The first marked location on the map, the river path, was far behind her. The second mark, the old chapel, was above her now, somewhere through layers of dirt and stone. The third mark, beneath Rosemary Street, led directly ahead. Toward something the circle once guarded. Toward something Marion sought. Toward something Ilara no longer had the luxury to avoid. The door beneath Rosemary Street. A massive wooden door appeared at the end of the tunnel. Tall, arched, iron-bound, with carvings so worn they looked like shadows trapped in the grain. Ilara approached slowly. The carvings formed a symbol she had only seen once, long ago, engraved in a book the circle's founders protected with their lives. It meant, "Here rests the story women kept safe when the city forgot." Ilara placed her palm on the door. It felt warm, as if it recognized her. With a deep breath, she pushed. The hinges groaned softly, not with resistance, but with age. The door opened. Inside was a chamber lit by the faint reflection of her lantern. Dust covered everything like a soft veil. Ilara stepped in. There were shelves carved into the stone walls, each holding ruins, broken jars, half-burned candles, parchment scraps, pieces of leather satchels long rotted away. At the center of the room was a stone pedestal, and on it lay a box. Not large, not ornate, a simple, wooden, locked with an iron latch. The lock carried a symbol she never expected to see again. the insignia of the circle's founders. Her breath shook. "So it's true," she whispered. "The heart of the circle was buried here." She reached forward slowly, her hand trembling just slightly, and touched the box. It was cold. Too cold. Ilara felt something shift in the air behind her. A presence. She didn't turn immediately. Instead, she let her hand slide down from the box and tighten around the lantern's handle. The presence stepped closer. Soft, deliberate footfalls in the dust. A voice followed. "I told you," it said quietly. "You always did find what shouldn't be found." Ilara's spine stiffened. She turned slowly. Marion Gray stood in the doorway, cloaked in black, breathing softly, eyes reflecting the lantern's glow like twin mirrors of calm. Ilara lifted her chin. "You followed me." Marion smiled faintly. "You showed me the way." Ilara stepped in front of the pedestal, guarding the box. "You're not touching it." Marion tilted her head, amusement flickering in her eyes. "Ilara, you don't even know what this is." "Then tell me." Marion stepped farther into the chamber. "It is the last record of the Circle's founding. A record of the women who shaped London from the shadows, who held the truths that kings feared, who protected the powerless." Ilara didn't move. "And you want it because—" Marion's smile faded. "Because truth is power, and women like us have been denied power for too long." Ilara's eyes darkened. "You betrayed the Circle. You don't want power for women, you want power for yourself." Marion's jaw tightened, only slightly. "Power is wasted on those who hide in bakeries." Ilara didn't flinch. "I hide nothing." "Don't you?" Marion asked softly. "Not even from yourself." Ilara's fingers tightened around the lantern. Marion's voice lowered. "You could have been great, Ilara. You were the sharpest among us, the bravest, the only one I ever considered an equal." Ilara didn't let her voice tremble. "You destroyed everything the Circle stood for." "I tested it." "You broke it." "I exposed its weakness." Ilara's heart thudded painfully. "The Circle's weakness," she whispered, "was trusting you." Marion's expression flickered, just for a moment. Something old. Something human. Something hurt. But she masked it instantly. "Ilara," she said, softer than before. "Give me the box, and no one else will have to suffer." Ilara took a slow breath. "No." Marion's eyes hardened. "Then you leave me no choice." She moved her hand toward her cloak. Ilara's grip tightened. "Don't," Ilara said quietly. But Marion pulled out something Ilara recognized instantly. A slender metal tool used to pick locks. She wasn't reaching for a weapon. She was reaching for the box. "Ilara," Marion whispered. "You can't protect something you don't understand." Ilara stepped forward, placing herself fully between Marion and the pedestal. "I don't need to understand it," she said. "I only need to protect it." Marion exhaled slowly. Her voice lowered into a dangerous calm. "You always were stubborn. And you always underestimated me." A beat of silence. Then Marion said, "And move." Ilara didn't. Marian's fingers tightened around the metal tool. Ilara. No. Fog drifted through the doorway like a silent witness as the two women faced each other in the dim chamber. One carrying betrayal, the other carrying truth. Both carrying the weight of a past that had never died. Finally, Marian whispered, "So be it." She stepped backward into the fog. Her figure dissolved. Her presence vanished. Her footsteps faded. But her final words hung in the air, sharp as a blade. "You can protect the box, Ilara. But you can't protect the girl upstairs." Ilara's blood ran cold. Lydia. Marian wasn't done. She was moving upward. Toward the bakery. Toward Lydia. Toward the map. Ilara grabbed the lantern. The chamber trembled as she sprinted for the stairs. Her boots kicking up dust. Her heart pounding in her throat. Her breath sharp and desperate. "Lydia," she cried. Her voice echoed through the tunnels. "Lydia." Ilara climbed the stairs two at a time. Faster than she had ever moved. Fear burning through her like fire. The stone door loomed above. Lydia was behind it. And Marian was no longer below. Ilara reached the top of the stairway with a force she didn't know she still possessed. Her lungs burned, her heartbeat echoed in her ears, and her fingers tightened around the lantern handle until her knuckles whitened. The stone door was shut. Completely silent. Completely still. Her breath froze. "Lydia," she called, her voice trembling. No answer. Ilara pressed her palm against the door. Cold stone. No movement. She pushed harder. Nothing. Fear sliced through her chest like a cold blade. "Lydia," she shouted again. Still nothing. For a desperate moment, she felt 10 years collapse around her. Loss, betrayal, memories she had buried deeply. All returning with Marian's final words. "You can protect the box, Ilara, but you can't protect the girl upstairs." Ilara slammed both hands against the door. "Open," she cried, "open." The stone trembled faintly, as if responding to her voice, to her fear, to her desperation. Ilara closed her eyes and placed her forehead against it. "Please," she whispered, "please." A soft click echoed on the other side. Then the door slid open. The bakery in silence. The bakery was quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps. No shifting of chairs. No sound of Lydia's father coughing softly, as he always did in the early mornings. Only darkness. The lantern Ilara carried through a trembling circle of light across the flour-scattered floor. "Lydia," she called, voice cracking. No answer. She moved further inside. The chairs were still where she had left them. The blanket was still draped across the sleeping corner. The flour bags leaned untouched against the wall. And the cupboard, the one hiding the map's entrance, was open. Wide open. Ilara's heart dropped. She rushed toward it, nearly stumbling on the uneven stones. The floorboard panel was lifted. The compartment exposed. Empty. Her breath hitched. No, no, no. She knelt, running her hands frantically around the opening. The map was gone. She squeezed her eyes shut. Marion had been here. She had gone straight for the map. Straight for Lydia. Straight for everything Ilara was trying to protect. Ilara. The weak voice came from the corner. Lydia's father. He was awake, barely leaning against the wall, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead. Ilara rushed to him. What happened? Where is Lydia? Where is she? He swallowed painfully. Ilara, I'm so sorry. Tell me, she cried. He lifted a trembling hand. She went after her. Ilara froze. What? He coughed violently, gripping his chest. Marion, she came up from the tunnels. She took the map. Lydia tried to stop her. What happened? Ilara demanded. She followed Marion out, said she wouldn't let her escape. Ilara's breath shattered. Lydia. A girl barely grown. Chasing Marion Gray, the most dangerous woman Ilara had ever known. Where did they go? He pointed weakly toward the door. The fog, I heard Lydia shout her name, and then they vanished into the street. Ilara's lantern shook in her hand. Lydia was out there. In the fog. Alone. With Marion. Her heartbeat surged. I'm going after her, Ilara whispered. Lydia's father reached for her wrist. Ilara, don't go alone, she'll kill you. Ilara shook her head. No, she won't, not until she gets what she wants. What does she want? He whispered. Ilara's voice trembled. A maid. He closed his eyes in pain. Ilara. She squeezed his hand gently. I promise you, she whispered, I will bring her back. Then she stood, lifted the lantern, tied her cloak tightly, and stepped toward the bakery door. She paused only once, looking back at the quiet shop that had been her refuge for years. The scent of flour, the warmth of the oven stones, the soft glow of the lantern above the entrance. All of it felt suddenly fragile. Then she pushed open the door. Into the fog. The fog outside had grown thicker. Heavier. Almost alive. It swallowed Rosemary Street in a cold, gray silence. Ilara stepped into it, closing the bakery door behind her. The lantern's light barely reached 2 feet ahead. She listened. At first, nothing. Then, a faint echo. Footsteps. Vast. Runnings. Not far away. Ilara followed the sound, her own steps soft on the cobblestones. Lydia, she shouted. No reply. She ran faster. The fog parted just enough to reveal the narrow street, lined with old windows and chimneys, exhaling thin wisps of smoke. Another sound. Soft, sharp, metallic. Ilara froze. That sound. She knew it. A blade being drawn. Lydia, she called again. And this time, Ilara. The voice was high, frightened, echoing from somewhere ahead. Lydia. Ilara sprinted, lantern swinging wildly, light bouncing off the fog like scattered shards. Lydia, keep talking. Ilara, she. The rest was swallowed. Ilara followed the direction of the voice. Down the next street. Past the old lamppost leaning sideways. Toward the docks. The smell of the river grew strong. Cold. Sharp. Unforgiving. Ilara's heart thudded painfully. Not here. Not the river. Not again. Lydia, she screamed. Her lantern caught a shape in the fog. A figure. Small. A shaking. Backed against a wall. Lydia. Ilara ran toward her. But before she reached her, another figure stepped out of the fog like a shadow unfolding. Tall. Calm. Silent. Marion Gray. She held the rolled map in one hand. In the others, a thin, glinting blade. Ilara, Marion said softly, always arriving a moment too late. Lydia's breaths came out in trembling gasps. Ilara, she took the map. I see that, Ilara murmured. Marion tilted her head. You shouldn't have followed me, Lydia. Curiosity ruins young women. Ilara stepped between them. Put the knife down. Marion smiled faintly. You say that as if you still carry authority. Put it down. You want the map? Marion asked. Or the girl? Ilara's jaw tightened. And both. Marion laughed softly. Impossible. She raised the blade slightly. Ilara raised the lantern. Then, Marion's expression shifted. Not to anger. Not to fear. To curiosity. Ilara, she said slowly, do you know what this map opens? Ilara didn't answer. Marion continued, voice smooth as silk. It opens the story London buried, the story men erased, the story of what power truly looked like before they built their walls and crowns. Ilara's voice was a whisper. And you want to rewrite that story alone? Marion's eyes gleamed. I want to finish what the circle feared to start. Ilara stepped closer. You don't need the knives. Marion stepped closer too. Don't I? Lydia whimpered. Ilara held her ground. If you hurt her, Ilara said quietly, you lose me. For the first time. Marion's face faltered. Ilara. The fog swirled around them. The river churned softly below the dock. A lantern creaked in the wind. Then, Marion lowered the blade. Just slightly. Enough. Ilara grabbed Lydia's hand. Run, she whispered. Lydia bolted. Marion's eyes widened. Ilara. Ilara stepped back, blocking Marion's path. This ends tonight, she whispered. Marion looked at her, really looked. As if seeing the woman she once knew. Then she spoke softly. It ends when I have the truth. Ilara lifted her lantern, its flame burning brighter despite the fog. And the truth, she said, is that you never knew how to hold it. The wind howled softly around them. Marion's expression hardened again. Ilara Finch, she whispered. You have just made the greatest mistake of your life. Ilara's heart thudded. But she didn't step back. Not anymore. Because behind her, safe in the fog, her bakery waited. Lydia waited. The truth waited. And Alara was no longer the woman who hid underground. She was the woman who climbed back up. The woman who stood her ground. The woman the circle once feared. And loved. Fog curled like silver threads around the narrow dock, hiding the river's dark waters beneath it. Lamps flickered weakly in the morning wind, bending and stretching their shadows against the old stone walkways. Alara stood still, the lantern warm in her hand, its light trembling across Marian's sharp, unreadable stare. For a moment, time held its breath. London held its breath. Even the river seemed to wait. Alara, Marian whispered, her voice low, unsteady. You let her run. Alara didn't blink. She's a child, you pointed a blade at her. What did you expect me to do? Marian's grip tightened around the rolled map. I expected you to understand I wasn't going to harm her. Alara raised an eyebrow. Forgive me if your history disagrees. A muscle jumped in Marian's jaw, barely visible beneath the fog. She stepped closer, and Alara kept the lantern raised between them. Alara, Marian whispered, her voice strangely softer now, I didn't kill anyone that night. Alara's breath caught. Not the man by the river, not your friend, not the one they said I betrayed. I never killed any of them. Alara felt her heart tighten, not in trust, not in forgiveness, but in the confusion only old wounds could stir. Then what did you do, Marian? Alara asked quietly. Marian's gaze drifted to the river, as if the water itself carried the memory she hated. I revealed the truth, a truth they didn't want the circle or you to know. Alara stepped forward, her voice steady. And what truth was worth betraying all of us? Marian's eyes returned to hers, sharper now. The founders lied. Alara frowned. About what? About the tunnels, about what's buried beneath London, about the women who came before the circle. Alara's chest tightened. You're stalling. Marian shook her head. No, I'm trying to show you that we're on the same side, Alara. We always were. Alara didn't move. Marian unrolled the map slowly, revealing the faded ink symbols, the 3 marked locations, and the river's winding path. This isn't a map of tunnels, Marian said softly. It's a record of every woman who disappeared from the early city, every healer, every storyteller, every midwife, every teacher. They weren't lost, Alara. Her voice cracked, just barely. They were silenced. Alara's breath faltered. Buried, Marian whispered. Under London. The fog pulsed, as if responding to the weight of her words. This map, Marian said, is the only surviving memory of them, the only way to follow their stories. Don't you understand? This isn't about power. This is about restoring what was erased. Alara stared at her for a long, long moment, then shook her head slowly. No, you're lying. You always twist truth when it suits you. Marian's eyes flashed, not in anger, but something close to heartbreak. Alara, why won't you ever believe me? Because belief is earned, Alara replied quietly, and you lost that long ago. A silence settled between them, thick as the fog, heavy with years of unfinished words, forgotten wounds, and choices neither could undo. Then Marian whispered. You came after her instead of the map. Alara held her gaze. Yes, she answered softly, every time. Something shifted in Marian's expression. A flicker, a memory of who she used to be. The version of herself that once walked beside Alara as an equal. A friend. A mirror. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Marion stepped back. "This isn't finished," she whispered. "It never is," Alara replied. Marion turned sharply and began walking toward the river's edge, disappearing into the thick fog. Her boots tapped lightly against the dock, fading into the distance until only the fog spoke. Alara lifted the lantern and stepped away from the water, heart still pounding with the heat of confrontation. Finding Lydia, she called out softly, "Lydia." No answer. She forced herself to breathe slowly. Calmly. Steadily. The fog at the far end of the dock shifted. A small figure emerging. "Lydia," Alara ran toward her. Lydia stumbled forward, breathless, shaking, tears streaked down her face. Alara, I tried to stop her. I couldn't, she was too fast." Alara wrapped her arms around the girl. "SHH, you're safe now. You did nothing wrong." Lydia clung to her desperately. "I was so scared. I thought she would hurt you." Alara stroked her hair gently. "She didn't. I'm here, and you're safe." Lydia finally pulled back, wiping her eyes. "She has the map." "I know," Alara whispered. Lydia swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" Alara took her hand and squeezed it. "We go back." "Back where?" Alara looked toward the bakery, barely visible through the fog, its small lantern still glowing faintly like a distant star. "Home," Alara said softly. "For now." They turned and walked slowly, hand in hand, through the fog. Alara's lantern glowed warm again, pushing the mist back just enough for them to see a path. When they reached the bakery door, Lydia hesitated. "Alara, if Marion comes back." Alara placed a gentle finger on her lips. "She won't touch you, not while I'm alive." Lydia's eyes watered again, but she nodded. Together, they stepped inside. Alara locked the door carefully, feeling the weight of the world settle onto her shoulders. Lydia's father lay sleeping, breathing shallowly but alive. Lydia went to him immediately. Alara set the lantern down on the table. Then she sat. Finally still. Finally breathing. Her hands trembled slightly. Marion had the map. The tunnels were awake. The truth beneath London was unfolding faster than she could contain. But Lydia was safe. For tonight. That was enough. Alara closed her eyes and whispered to the quiet bakery. "The city isn't done with us. And we're not done with it." A soft wind rattled the lantern above the bakery door. London listened. The bakery felt heavier that night. Not because of fear. Not because of danger. But because of the truth Alara carried inside her. Truth she was not ready to face. Truth Lydia was too young to understand. Truth the city had tried to bury for centuries. Yet still, truth had a way of climbing back to the surface. Like a candle flame, rising stubbornly against the wind. Alara sat by the wooden table, lantern flickering softly beside her. Lydia slept on a makeshift cot, exhaustion finally pulling her into rest. Her father breathed lightly, fragile but alive. Outside, the fog thickened again, curling around the bakery walls, as if the city itself were listening. Alara stared at the floor, at the stone that hid the entrance to the tunnels. Marion had the map. The city had awakened. The truth was closer than ever. And now, London waited for what Alara would do next. A quiet knock. Sometime around midnight, a knock echoed from the front door. Not loud. Not hurried. A soft, measured tap. Alara stood instantly. Her breath steadied. Her hands quieted. Her mind sharpened. She walked to the door and whispered, "Who is it?" A woman's voice replied, "Tessa." Alara's eyes widened. She opened the door just enough. A middle-aged woman, wrapped in a dark shawl, stepped out of the fog. Her face was stern but gentle, her eyes sharp but kind. "Tessa," Alara breathed, "you're alive." Tessa nodded carefully. "So are you, I wasn't sure." Alara opened the door and let her in. Lydia stirred at the sound, rubbing her eyes. "Who is she?" Alara smiled softly. "Someone I once trusted." Tessa stepped closer to the lantern, letting the warm light reveal the scars on her hands. Scars Alara recognized instantly. Circle scars. Scars of oath. Scars of truth carriers. "You weren't supposed to return," Alara whispered. Tessa's voice softened. "Neither were you." Why Tessa returned? Tessa sat at the table, her shawl brushing against the flour-dusted wood. "I saw Marion," she said. Alara's chest tightened. "When?" "Hours ago. She asked me if I still remembered the tunnels, if I still believed in the old ways." Alara stiffened. "She's trying to gather the remnants of the circle." Tessa nodded. "Yes, but not to restore it. She wants to rewrite it." Lydia frowned. "Rewrite what?" Tessa looked at her softly. "The truth." Alara lowered her voice. "What did she tell you?" "That she found the map, and that she was going to use it to finish what the circle began, only she never said what that meant." Alara exhaled deeply. "She's lying. She wants power, not justice." Tessa nodded. "That's why I came to you. Because if Marion holds the map, then the last person she wants standing is you." Alara looked down. "And the last person I want harmed is that girl." Tessa followed her gaze to Lydia. Lydia sat silently, her hands balled into fists. "Alara," she whispered, "we can stop her, you know we can." Alara reached out and squeezed her hand. "We will." Returning to the tunnels. Before dawn, the three of them stood again at the hidden entrance beneath the bakery. Alara lifted the stone cover. Cold air drifted upward like a sigh. "You don't have to come," Alara told Tessa. Tessa shook her head. "I didn't come this far to stay behind." Lydia stepped forward. "And neither did I." Alara looked at her with both pride and fear. "You're brave," Alara whispered, "but you stay behind me." Lydia nodded. The three descended. One lantern. 3 shadows. And a truth waiting below. At the chambers. When they reached the chamber of the box, the sight froze them all. The pedestal was empty. The wooden box. The one Alara had protected. The one Marion had tried to take. Was gone. Only dust remained. Alara's breath trembled. "She has it," Tessa whispered. Lydia took a step back. What's inside it? Ilara touched the empty stone. Stories, she whispered. The stories of the women erased from London's history. The first truth keepers, the first healers, the first protectors. Tessa nodded. And the first victims of silence. Ilara closed her eyes. She wants to reveal the wrong parts of their stories, twist them, use them. Why? Lydia whispered. Because truth is powerful, Ilara said quietly. And Marion thinks she can reshape the past to control the future. Lydia's eyes glistened. So what do we do? Ilara lifted the lantern. We follow her. The heart of the tunnel. The tunnel ahead was darker, narrower, more ancient than anything they had seen. The air smelled of earth and forgotten centuries. The walls were lined with carvings. Faces, symbols, hands. Of women long gone. Lydia reached out and touched a carving of a woman holding a lantern. She looks like you, she whispered. Ilara swallowed. She looks like all of us. The tunnel widened suddenly, opening into a vast underground hall. A place with stone pillars, carved ceilings, and the remains of ancient benches once used for gatherings. And there, at the center, stood Marion, holding the opened box, holding the old parchments, holding the erased history of London's first women. The lantern light illuminated her face. Half shadow, half revelation. She looked up. You came, Marion said softly. Ilara stepped forward. Put the stories down. Marion gave a sad smile. After all these years, Ilara, you still think you're protecting something. I am. Marion lifted one parchment page toward the lantern light. This, she whispered, is the first story of the first woman ever taken by the city. They erased her, and everyone after her. Why shouldn't I bring them back? Ilara stepped closer. Because you aren't bringing them back, you're making them yours. Marion's voice trembled. No one else will fight for them. I am fighting, Ilara whispered. I always have. A silence. The three women stood in the underground hall. Marion holding the past. Ilara holding the present. Lydia holding the future. Then Marion's voice cracked. Ilara, you don't understand. They took everything from me. Everything, my mother, my sister, my place in the circle. If I don't do this, if I don't make this story mine, then who was I, who am I? Ilara softened. You were one of us. Marion's eyes filled. And now. Ilara stepped closer, placing her hand gently on the parchment Marion held. And now, she said softly, you can choose something better. Marion looked at her hand. Then at Tessa. Then at Lydia, whose eyes were full of fear, but also full of hope. Slowly, Marion's fingers loosened. The parchment slipped. Ilara caught it. Marion looked down. I'm so tired, she whispered. So tired of fighting the city. So tired of fighting myself. Ilara touched her shoulder. Then stopped fighting. For the first time in years. Marion cried. Real tears. Human tears. Not of power, but of release. She fell into Ilara's arms, trembling. Tessa stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on her back. Lydia watched, eyes filled with wonder, that even the strongest, even the fiercest, even the most broken, could come undone and become whole again. The return. Together, they carried the box back to the bakery. Together, they sealed the tunnels. Together, they placed the parchments safely in the lantern-lit attic. Not hidden, but preserved. For truth did not belong underground. Truth belonged to those willing to protect it. Marion stayed. Not as an enemy. Not as a leader. Not as a keeper of secrets. But as a woman finally free of the battles she had lost long ago. Lydia slept peacefully that night. Her father healed slowly. Ilara baked bread in soft morning light. Marion sweeping flour from the floor, as if she had always belonged there. And London, foggy, ancient, beautiful, slept again, not because its stories were forgotten, but because they were finally safe. The last lantern. Late one evening, Ilara climbed the stairs to her attic. She lit a single lantern by the window. Lydia joined her. "What's that for?" she asked. Ilara smiled. "For those who came before us," she whispered. "And for those who will come after." Lydia leaned against her shoulder. "Will Marion stay?" Ilara nodded slowly. "As long as she chooses truth over power." "And we," Lydia whispered. Ilara kissed her hair. "We will always choose truth." Outside, the fog settled softly over Rosemary Street. The lantern glowed. And for the first time in centuries, beneath London's old stones, within the heart of the bakery, between the hands of women who refused to be forgotten, history rested. Gently, safely, beautifully.